KREM 2 News begins now.
Thank you for joining us on KREM 2 Plus. I'm Tim Pham. This is your KREM 2 News Week in Review. Join us as we take a closer look at some of the biggest stories in the Inland Northwest this past week.
Well, yeah, and Inland Power is not saying much at this point. One of these attorneys says he has an eyewitness ready to testify about seeing sparks coming out of a yard light near the fire's origin. Officials have determined the gray fire was human-caused, but what exactly happened on the afternoon of August 18th is still under investigation. That isn't stopping two attorneys from filing complaints in Spokane Superior Court against Inland Power.
We've been investigating this very thoroughly for several weeks since the fire.
John Allison is representing 44 fire victims and says he has an eyewitness ready to testify.
Who observed sparks coming out of this yard light that was up above the area where we believe the fire started along South Gray Road. We know this was an Inland Power equipment, the wire, the pole, the light, the power pole and transformer it came from, and we hope to learn and retrace the history of this to find out why this malfunctioned so horribly.
KREM 2 reached out to Inland Power for comment. They told us, quote, "We learned of the lawsuit this afternoon. As you know, the cause is still under investigation, and we will not make any speculations while an active investigation is still underway."
That's very standard. At this point, they are unlikely to acknowledge that it's their equipment. Typically, they deny and they require us to prove it, which is fine.
Gerald Singleton filed a separate complaint against Inland Power. His team sent an arson investigator to look at the fire's origin a few weeks ago.
He interviewed everybody he could. He looked at the indicators that were on the ground, which indicated where the fire started, which direction it moved, and where it was in relation to the power lines. And all of those indicators were consistent with a power line caused fire.
It's hogwash.
So
it wasn't.
Think Inland Power had anything?
Absolutely not. I would bet my life on it. I got the pictures to prove it.
George Kirby is not an attorney or fire investigator, but he was working on a house near Gray Road and snapped these photos just after 12:45 that day. He's convinced the fire was sparked by farming equipment.
I watched him and his driver come out of the field, the flames, and chasing him. There wasn't no way it started on that hill or over on the other side of that hill. It started in that wheat field.
It could be several months before fire investigators determine what really happened.
And the real reason why we have filed the case now is to give the victims of the fire a seat at the table, to have the opportunity to inspect the evidence, to take testimony from witnesses through their counsel, to get to the bottom of why this happened, get to the truth. Not only to give the victims a chance for being made whole for all they've lost, but also to protect the community, to find out how and why this happened and how we can prevent it from happening again.
And that attorney is also representing victims of the Malden fire in their lawsuit against Avista. That trial is set for May.
Well, while there's rubble in the foundation of this home, there may also be dollar signs for some. Some people say asbestos testing is preventing them from taking the necessary step toward healing in more ways than one. This is the foundation of what was Annie Patrick's self-proclaimed God's grace.
Because it was His grace that allowed us to buy a 10-acre parcel with a creek going through the middle. It was more than I ever dreamed.
Her God's grace was burnt to nothing during the Oregon Road fire last month. Once she rebuilds, she plans to call it God's Grace Rises from the Ashes.
God only knows what my future plans hold, but I will be on this property till the end.
But all future plans are on hold until a certified asbestos abatement company can safely remove the debris, all because of one positive asbestos sample from her basement. Annie says she received a quote from IRS Environmental saying it could cost $85,000 to remove all of the asbestos-contaminated debris off her property.
One and you're done. One and it's expensive.
Annie says insurance money spent on testing and removal will put her back on money for rebuilding. She said she'd rather take care of the problem quickly than drag it out and wait.
And I think I should be able to bury my asbestos for free on my own property. And then easy done. I would have been done within 2 weeks of the fire.
While Spokane County Emergency Management hears homeowners' frustrations, Jerry Bozar doesn't recommend burying asbestos.
There are other toxins in that, and that will eventually get into the groundwater. So we can't have people doing that.
Bozar says the county is working to take some of the burden off fire-affected homeowners.
If people do not have the funding to be able to dispose of that properly. That's what we're working on right now, to be able to help people with that process so they don't do things like that.
Durst says the county is working with the state to secure funding for debris management for uninsured homeowners needing to pay for asbestos testing. If funding is available, insured homeowners may also be eligible. Durst says the money may be secured in as early as the next few weeks. Annie says she's been living in Idaho for the last few weeks since the fire took her home. She says that this weekend, though, she'll be moving back onto her property in an RV, and that's where she'll be spending the winter until she's able to rebuild once again. In Elk, Janelle Finch, KREM 2 News. Jamie DeAndre remembers her head spinning as she went to grab as much as she could before flames from the gray fire completely engulfed her home. Following that fire, this is the state of her home. Little did she know, under this rubble, a miracle was waiting for her. For the last 6 years, Jamie DeAndre and her daughter Jasmine saw their family as a family of 3.
We would always joke around and be like, it's just 3 strong women in this household.
The third isn't too far away.
Come on.
Holding their cat Meows is something Jamie and Jasmine couldn't do for almost 3 weeks.
She's just such a good kitty, and she's just such a strong kitty, huh? Meow. Huh, Meows.
Jamie says when she evacuated her home during the gray fire, Meows was nowhere to be found. It wasn't until 4 days later, when evacuations were lowered, Jamie's brother called her to say he found Meows under rocks and rubble.
He wrapped her up, we put her in the car, she was meowing a little bit, and we rushed her right over to the Medical Lake Vet Hospital.
Doctors at the Medical Lake Veterinary Hospital say Meows was in critical condition. Part of her tail needed to be amputated, and the tips of her ears fell off.
So she had 4th-degree burns on the 2 front paws here, so those were down to the bone.
Meows didn't have any internal injuries, and her doctors say her long hair may have played a part in saving her life. But Jamie says even when they were separated, she knew Meows would be all right.
I knew that she would make it, but honestly, when we look collectively at what she went through, I can't believe she did.
Plus, Meows already had a reputation of not being a cat to mess with.
One time, I was outside watering the plants and she was fighting a raccoon.
Despite the extent of her injuries, the Medical Lake Vet Hospital says Meows is expected to make a full recovery. She may have some permanent scarring and rounded ears, but between Jamie, Jasmine, and Meows, their 3 strong women household will be taking on the next chapter of their life together. Jamie and Jasmine are preparing to move into a new rental home October 1st in Cheney. They say Meows will have a big, beautiful fenced-in backyard, as well as a space for all 3 of them to continue making memories. Janelle Finch, KREM 2 News.
Some members of City Council say they need to publicly stand apart from Mayor Woodward's August appearance with Shea. He's been accused of engaging in domestic terrorism and religious extremism. But Woodward told me this will have no bearing on her role as mayor or her re-election bid. For about a month, we've been hearing of plans to censure Mayor Nadine Woodward. But Monday night, that's not exactly what happened.
And there was a little bit of concern that censure sounded like censor, and that it was censoring freedom of religion, and that is really nothing about what this resolution did.
Instead, council voted to denounce her appearance at a prayer event where she stood on stage with Matt Shea. He was expelled from the state's Republican caucus after an investigation said he had ties to domestic terrorism. But Zach Zapone says the overall sentiment of what council did is the same as censure.
The mayor and her actions affiliated the city of Spokane with that extremism. It added legitimacy to that extremism. And this was simply saying we as a legislative body think that's wrong.
And when I walked up on that stage, I know there are people who think I should have walked right off of it, but I was amongst 4,000 members of our faith community, and we were there to pray.
Woodward sticks by earlier statements she didn't know Shea would be there, but she will change one thing going forward.
The one thing that I could have done differently was to vet out the event more, but I was invited by a friend, so I didn't ask as many questions. I will next time.
Zapone says while there's no official consequences for the mayor, the denouncement was a necessary signal to the community. Hate is not tolerated.
As I was leaving, I heard people who testified in support that came from Matt Shea's church saying, we almost had it. It was close. And that's really unfortunate because they believe that they're close to changing the tide here in Spokane.
The mayor tells KREM 2 News the denouncement is merely a political stunt.
The first person I brought into the mayor's office was from the LGBTQ+ community. I'm married to diversity. So to link me with some of the ideology is preposterous.
The resolution comes with no formal reprimand or repercussions for the mayor. 3 council members did vote against the resolution. Councilmember Jonathan Bingle, who has been censured before, says council doesn't apply them equally and called it a nakedly political move. Shannon Mowdy, KREM 2 News.
Kootenai County Sheriff Robert Norris says community members have brought hundreds of books to his attention for sexual or obscene content. He says at least 2 of those books were checked out from the Post Falls Library and violate Idaho state law. He believes that those books could lead to criminal consequences if they end up in the wrong hands. Kootenai County Sheriff Robert Norris says it isn't about taking what he calls inappropriate books off library shelves.
Doesn't call for any banning, doesn't call for any restrictions. It only says that if it's sexually explicit, that it should be in an area 18 and over.
One book someone in the community expressed concern over was published back in 1999. It's Deal With It, a whole new approach to your body, brain, and life as a girl. Norris says he's read the book in full and noted at least one page that goes against Idaho Statute 1815. That law says a person is guilty of disseminating material that is harmful to minors when a publication contains any explicit and detailed descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement or conduct. The page does include descriptive explanations of sexual acts. As a parent of a 14 and 15-year-old, the sheriff says he wouldn't want his kids having access to this book.
This goes beyond what sexual health and sexual reproductive health is.
Deal With It co-author Rebecca Ode says she understands her book isn't for everyone, but she says the book is an honest collection of conversations young people were having at the time.
All of the quotes that are in the book were existing conversations between teenage girls, and we use those to shape the actual structure and content of the book.
She knows the anxieties that can come with being a parent of a teen firsthand. Still, she doesn't believe her book will make kids grow up any faster than they should.
I believe, both as an author and a parent, that information does not lead to action. It actually can be a deterrent when the information is given really clearly and kids actually understand what they would be getting into.
We did reach out to the Community Library Network, which owns the Post Falls Library, today for reaction. In a statement, the director said after 17 years in circulation, the book has seen 42 uses. The audience for this book is grades 10 to 12. Currently, the only copy of the book is unavailable as it has reached long overdue lost status. Community Library Network policy says it is illegal to steal books from the library, but what you can do is make a request for a reconsideration of a book that you do not find appropriate. For more information on how to submit one of those requests, visit our website, KREM.com. In Post Falls, Janelle Finch, KREM 2 News.
2 days after West Bonner School District Superintendent Brandon Durst announced he would be stepping down, he sat down with trustees. They haven't held a meeting in over a month, and several meetings have been canceled, including last Wednesday's when trustee Troy Reinbold didn't show up. Reinbold attended tonight's meeting by phone and seemed to be in a hurry to wrap things up.
We're all done with business. Can I go?
Reinbold took several items off the agenda and did not stick around for public comments, telling board members he was parked on the side of the highway.
I'm soaking wet and covered in mud and trying to get home.
You're an elected official, and it is your promise and your oath to get here and do the business of the district. So I'm very happy he got here today.
Sandy Brower served on the board for 8.5 years and says she's sad to see the district in a tailspin.
It's been very frustrating to watch our local government or governance over our school districts kind of fall apart and kind of miss actually what it's all about. It's about our students and it's about our school district. And instead it became about politics and agendas and personal promotion.
My daughter goes to school here, and I didn't even know if there was going to be buses to drive her to school. I don't know who the superintendent is anymore because Brandon Durst put his resignation in, and as far as I'm concerned, he's out of office.
Durst announced on Monday he would step down as superintendent. He claims members of the community wish to see him fail, as well as the Idaho Department of Education, who determined he was unqualified to be superintendent.
The teachers, the principals are looking for that leadership. And so the board has got an issue that needs to be undertaken sooner than later.
And so now I want to see what the board's going to do next, what the next steps are. How are they going to bring our school back the way it needs to be?
Superintendent Durst called me woke, and I think he's correct. I think we are awake, and I thank him for coming if that was the benefit of having him here. The community is together, we have rallied, we're paying attention.
Now, Durst says his final day will be up to the board. We did ask for an interview with him following tonight's meeting to talk about his resignation. He told us he wouldn't be commenting on that tonight. Reporting in Priest River, Kyle Simchuk, KREM 2 News.
The reopening of this Dutch Bros coffee stand on Freya is a big deal, not only because it may be your favorite coffee stand and it's back in business, but for many in the community and the employees here, this coffee stand is the perfect example of resilience. At this Dutch Bros coffee stand,
what size were you thinking?
There's no shortage of fresh coffee. And on its reopening day, you'll find no shortage of resilience.
We're looking at it as a fresh start for everyone.
Dutch Bros owner Kevin Parker recalls the fear that struck him when he saw what happened here 2 years ago.
I rushed down here, and the first thing was to make sure all the employees were okay.
The driver of a dump truck plowed through the coffee stand. A home security camera nearby captured the moments leading up to the crash.
Had the truck hit just 2 more feet to the right, our entire crew probably would have been wiped out without knowing it.
The crash injured 7 people, including 2 employees, one of whom was Parker's daughter.
She was working at the window right here, and the truck hit right here, and so she was thrown to the ground.
He says fortunately her injuries weren't serious.
For me personally, it was the first time we felt vulnerable.
The driver, McGavin Madrain, failed 2 parts of a field sobriety test taken after the crash and admitted to using meth the night before. 6 months later, Madrain pleaded guilty to vehicular assault. He completed his 15-month sentence last summer and was released from DOC supervision just last week. But while he may be walking free, Madrain will be back in the courtroom soon.
It's crazy that I got the most injured.
That's Chelsea Ross, just days after she returned home from the hospital with injuries from the crash. The barista is suing Madrain and the construction company that employed him. Trial is expected to start next year. Meantime,
this is awesome. Great job.
The rebuild is complete. The stand back in business, and the new staff are excited to build on this fresh start.
It is a special stand, and I think it does, in fact, represent that when hard things happen, we do rebuild.
Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
Farmer Brad Isaac's quick to name off what he grows on his Coulee City farm.
We grow wheat, peas, potatoes, corn, bluegrass, some sunflower, some hybrid sunflower seeds, some hybrid canola seed.
But it's the wheat he grows that typically gets sent down the Palouse River and Coulee City Railway, also known as the PCC. According to the Washington State Department of Transportation, about 20 to 25% of the state's wheat gets shipped on this rail line. But the rail line's old, with some parts of it dating back about a century. Now, it's getting some help. The Federal Railroad Administration recently announced they're giving WashDOT $72.8 million in grant money. The grant, plus another almost $40 million in other funding, including from the state, will be used to make improvements to the rail line, including replacing worn rail, replacing rotted rail ties, surfacing the tracks, and rebuilding dilapidated roadway crossings. WashDOT officials say the need to improve and modernize the railway is critical.
We're in triage mode, but this will allow transformation. This will allow it to become up to a state of good repair.
Isaac, who lives right along the line, says the improvements will be a big help for them and give them some peace of mind.
The risk is not going to be the same of a derailing, of it causing damage, of crossings are going to be better because of it.
Once Spokane Stadium is done and ready for games, but
parking's on everyone's minds.
You might be wondering where to park when you get there.
We do have 3 free lots that we're going to be utilizing this fall. And these are PFD lots, so we do have lot D right down below, and then over my shoulder you can see lot A and B.
Take a look at your screen. This is a map showing you where those 3 lots are west of the stadium.
These are free with a parking pass that you can print out online.
The lots open an hour before and closes an hour after events, and it is first come, first serve. SPS Media Director Ryan Lancaster says he's excited for the stadium to welcome the public.
It's awesome to see people that are, the general public coming in and seeing it for themselves.
Lancaster does say that there will be overlapping events with the other venues.
This is the first year, so we did have some conflicting events.
But he's not worried.
It's always nice to come early, get the closest spots, but we should have plenty of parking to go around.
If parking does get full, the stadium is a 5-minute walk from Riverfront Park, and there are buses that stop right at the stadium. And Lancaster says after this year, there shouldn't be any more conflicting events.
You can see it stretches out pretty far in the distance. We also have parking for those who'd like to be closer.
Another parking lot is being worked on where the old Value Village used to be. That lot will be ready by this spring. So this paper I'm holding is a free parking pass you can print off online. Make sure to have one on your dashboard when you park, and to access the link on where to get it, head to our website at KREM.com. In Spokane, Nathan Hyun, KREM 2 News.
Start on one end, and then we'll just work our way down, cut all the tops of them and where the stems are. Then we'll just start piling them and then load them up in bins.
10,000 pumpkins all waiting to be picked.
It'll probably take 40 hours. And so we'll do all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the weekend before the first event.
So they can make the trip to Spokane for the annual Great Pumpkin Fest.
My dad doesn't always grow pumpkins, but when he does, it's for the Great Pumpkin Fest.
Meet the Pumpkin Cowboy.
A big thing with pumpkins is making sure they're spread apart and then keeping the weeds out.
He normally goes by the name Joshua Loretta. He moved to Moses Lake as a kid and has been using his farming skills to fundraise since he was a teen.
I was trying to raise money for basketball camps. And so I used to pull a hoop out on the street and I'd shoot baskets. And I'd have a truck of corn and people came by, I'd sell corn and then go back to shooting all day.
The Loretta family spends months planning the Great Pumpkin Fest, along with the help of dozens of volunteers.
So all proceeds, go to local charities, like I said, and the effort that it takes from volunteers and my dad and raising them and everything. I mean, it's just a great way to come out, give back, have a great time with families, and it really promotes, I think, local nonprofits that may need the help.
The idea for the fundraiser came during COVID.
But Chris Sloan, he was the director of Bite to Go, and when COVID happened, more kids at home, and food insecurity, was a lot higher than it was when kids were going to school. And so we had this crazy idea to raise money. I, called my dad and said, hey, raise some pumpkins, and we're going to bring them to Spokane, and we're going to have a pumpkin fest.
The first year, they raised $34,000 from the pumpkin sales.
Each year, we expand on our partners with different nonprofits who, get the proceeds, and all the funds from the Great Pumpkin Fest go back to local charities and families.
And this year, they're hoping to raise even more.
See you at the patch.
Yeah, see you at the patch.
Nick's a really brave guy.
I'm Nick Tyson. How are you? Good to see you.
He's a really positive guy, and he's always been like that.
I'm doing chemo every 3 weeks. Everything is still stage 4, but I'm getting along pretty good. I'm doing great. I can't complain. Got to stay positive and just keep working.
I'm Dan Cummins. Nick could be like, he could lose both his arms. And then I would see him the next day, and I'd be like, hey man, what's going on? How you feeling? He'd be like, I'm fine. Hey, how are you doing? Like, he would immediately turn, he's like, tennis is a little harder
High
now.
five.
Yeah.
How long have you two known each other?
23 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I remember we had the club downtown at Season Ticket. And you had just graduated from Gonzaga.
Yeah.
And you came walking into the open mic with your guitar and a backpack.
Yeah. I have the date memorized. It was August 3rd, 2000. And then you ruined my life by pushing me into comedy.
I know. I've done it to a few people.
I mean, I joke, but without Nick, I wouldn't have gotten really into stand-up. He was very encouraging in a business where most people are not.
A good friend of mine, Susan Rice, called me up and wondered how things were going. And cancer not only kills your health and everything else, but it ruins your finances. And we were talking, she said, we're gonna do a benefit for you. I said, no, absolutely not. I don't want a benefit, just leave that alone. But I won't say what she told me, but I can't say it on the air. But I appreciate the support that I've gotten, like from people like Dan, all the comedians that came together. This was just, to me, I'm so humbled by this.
It's very, very inspiring. Yeah, Nick's he's an awesome human being. You know, it's like that cliche of attitude is everything, and you know, your life's gonna be what it is, whether you have a good attitude or a bad attitude. So you might as well have a good one, and it's gonna be a great night of comedy for a great cause. You're not gonna have a bad time if you come out. You know, it's just the added benefit of you're truly helping like a wonderful person in a rough time, and so. You know, come out unless you're a complete piece of garbage of a human being, then I guess, you know, that's the only reason we want to see you.
Thank you for joining us here on KREM 2 Plus for a look at some of the biggest news stories of the past week. For the most current news throughout the weekend, you can watch our latest newscast right here on KREM 2 Plus. Just look for them in the bottom navigation menu. I'm Tim Pham. Thanks for watching.